Now before I actually get into the bulk of this video, I want to be very clear what version of Guts I am speaking about. I am not talking about Guts' entire life, I'm not talking about his entire story. I am specifically targeting the 2 years in between the eclipse and when he returns to Casca and Godo. And the only arcs that we actually see take place in these 2 years is the Black Swordsman arc and the Lost Children, and some other implications that you can make from these 2 arcs. The first important thing that I'd like to highlight is the way Guts deals with his trauma. Combat, and specifically honing his arts as a swordsman, is the way he deals with trauma and any hardship that he goes through. It is something that he started doing the moment he could walk, and it's something he's continued to do throughout his entire life. So even though the art of honing your sword and training is an objectively challenging thing, this does not mean that it is the brave decision in all circumstances. And the fact that fighting and killing is actually a coping mechanism for Guts in many ways is exactly why he's a coward in the 2 years between the eclipse and returning to Casca. After the eclipse, both Guts and Casca are left in a broken and vulnerable position. And while Guts definitely has it bad, Casca for sure has it worse. She has been abused in every which way possible, in the worst ways possible, to the point where her mind has actually snapped. The Casca that Guts once loved and knew, for all intents and purposes, is sort of gone for the time being. And in a very interesting and traumatic way, I think this is a moment that Guts is actually being tested as an individual. His love for Casca as a person is being tested. Does he love her enough, and is he strong enough to stand by her in her most challenging hour? And to put it simply, the answer is no. He was not strong enough to do that. Instead of standing by and helping Casca in any way that he can, he just gets up and leaves. And his justification for doing this is that he needs to rage war on the demons that are hunting him and Casca. And I could see this as a valid reason if Casca wasn't safe inside of the cave. The truth of the matter is, Guts was so enraged that he wanted to do this. He wanted to go around hunting and delivering pain onto those that wronged him and Casca. And this is hidden from us for the whole first chunk of the story, because frankly, Guts is just so badass. Guts on a surface level just seems so cool. I mean, he's 6'8", he wields a 400-pound sword, he hunts down monsters, he stares death in the face every single day. It doesn't matter how much sleep he gets or doesn't get, he still wakes up every day and repeats this cycle over and over and over again. And to both the audience and everyone that he actually interacts with in the story, he's sort of a freak of nature. So how is it possible that a man that is doing such otherworldly acts of what is seemingly courage is actually a coward? And this brings us back to the start of this video. This is actually the easier decision for Guts to make. Putting his life on the line every single day and fighting these demons is something he's been doing for his whole life. It's all he's ever really known how to do. So even though the monsters are at a higher level, Guts is doing the same exact thing. And like he did when he was a child, instead of actually facing his fears, facing his trauma, and trying to work through them, he just fully gives himself into his work. And this is actually something we see very often in the real world with men. When faced with hard questions and hard tasks, very often men will become workaholics and give themselves into their work, masking what's really going on underneath. So to the outside world, anyone who sees them doing these acts will not think they're a coward, they just think they're doing their job, they're doing the right thing as a man. The actual brave decision that Guts should have made would have been staying with Casca, confronting all of his fears, all of his anger, all of his depression, all of his trauma alongside with her. He would have to learn how to be strong in an entirely different way than he's ever done before. So even though this decision would have required probably zero fighting, this would have been the much harder task for Guts to accomplish. That is exactly why when Guts finally tries to return to Casca and cracks in the blade, he feels great shame. Both Godo and Rickert make him face the fact that he has been a coward, that in his loved one's darkest hour, he turns away from her, instead just giving in to his primal desire for rage and violence. And that is why his time in the cave during Cracks in the Blade Part 2 is such a difficult time for him, even though he's not fighting anything. Because instead of dealing with the physical monsters in front of him, he's having to confront the one inside of him, having to come to terms with what the Beast of Darkness really is and what it represents to him, noticing that for all the strength that he derives from the Beast of Darkness, it is taking a toll on him and it does cost something. And that cost is his humanity, it's his love, it's who he was before the eclipse. And that is why Guts' bravest moment doesn't happen while he's fighting a demon, it happens while he's just sitting there under the moonlight pondering what he should do. His decision to save Casca and quote-unquote never lose her again is symbolic of him never letting himself go again. It's symbolic of his choice to be a better man. And that is why Conviction is my favorite arc in all of Berserk, because it is when he is at his most vulnerable and when he is at his absolute bravest. Aside from all the literal physical obstacles in his way, he's overcome the hardest obstacle of them all, himself. And not only is this the moment that Guts himself changed, but it's also the moment Guts changed my life. It's a moment where me, the reader, actually started questioning my own life and my own decisions. Questioning if I had actually made the right, hard decisions in my own life. And on a very personal note, if I never read this story, if I never read this chapter, I would not be here making this video for you today. This was the moment in time that I fully comprehended what true courage and bravery looks like. And I have applied the lessons that I learned while reading Berserk to my everyday life since I read it. Because what makes Guts as a character so brave, and what makes people so brave, is the ability to overcome their cowardice, and in turn, become far braver than they ever thought was possible.